The first thing my father said when the billionaire walked into my sister's engagement dinner was, "Oh, Clara, don't mind her. She's unemployed right now." He said it loudly enough for the entire table to hear. I was holding a glass of sparkling water when he said it, and for a second I honestly thought I had misheard him. Then the billionaire looked directly at me. He smiled and said, "Unemployed?" A strange silence fell over the table, because the man standing there was not just some wealthy stranger. He was my boss, and he had just walked into the one room where my family had spent the entire evening trying to convince everyone that I was a failure. My name is Clara Reynolds. I was 29 years old when my family decided once again that my life needed to be explained to other people. It happened at my younger sister Emily's engagement dinner. The dinner was being held at an expensive country club about 40 minutes outside the city. My parents had rented a private dining room with tall windows, gold-framed mirrors, white linen tablecloths, and enough flowers to make the place smell like a florist had exploded inside it. Emily was engaged to Daniel Mercer. Daniel came from a wealthy family. His father owned several construction companies, and his mother had spent the better part of 20 years sitting on charity boards and attending events where everyone seemed to know everyone else. Emily loved that world. She had always loved that world. And, to be fair, Emily had always been good at fitting into it. She was beautiful in a polished, effortless way. Blonde hair, perfect makeup, expensive clothes, and a smile that could make strangers feel like they had known her for years. I looked different. I had dark brown hair that I usually wore in a loose bun because I was constantly working. I preferred simple clothes. I didn't wear much jewelry. I carried a laptop almost everywhere. And I had spent the last 6 years building a career that my family barely understood. Corporate design. Not interior decorating. Not graphic design for birthday invitations. Corporate design. I worked for a global technology and investment company called Vantage Meridian. And for the last 2 years, I had been the lead corporate designer on one of the company's largest international projects. The company was owned by a man named Adrian Blackwell. You might recognize the name if you follow business news. At the time, Adrian was one of the youngest billionaires in the country. He was also my boss. Technically, I didn't report directly to him, but I worked closely with his executive office. And that distinction mattered, because Adrian Blackwell was not the kind of person who casually attended family engagement dinners. He was there that night because Daniel's father had business connections with him. I knew he might attend. My parents didn't know that, and neither did Emily. At least, I assumed they didn't. I arrived at the dinner 20 minutes early. My mother was standing near the entrance when I walked in. She looked me up and down. Not warmly, not proudly. Like she was inspecting something she'd ordered online and wasn't sure she wanted to keep. "You wore that?" I looked down at my dress. It was navy blue. Simple. Elegant. Nothing inappropriate about it. "Is there something wrong with it?" She sighed. "Nothing is wrong with it, it's just—" She glanced toward the dining room. "Everyone else is dressing up." I thought I was dressed up. You know what I mean. I did. I always knew what she meant. My family had developed an entire language of insults that never sounded like insults. "You're very independent." Meaning, "You're difficult. You're focused on your career." Meaning, "You don't have a family. You have your own style." Meaning, "You don't know how to present yourself. You're doing your own thing." Meaning, "You're not successful enough to fit in with us." I smiled politely. "Where's Emily?" "Getting ready." "She looks excited." My mother smiled. "She's glowing." Then she looked at me again. "You should try to enjoy tonight." "I will." "And please don't talk about work too much." I blinked. "I don't usually." "Clara." "What?" "This is Emily's night." I nodded. "I know." She walked away. I stood there for a moment. That familiar ache had already started in my chest. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something older. something I had carried since childhood, the feeling of being tolerated rather than celebrated. I grew up believing there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Emily got good grades. I got good grades. Emily joined clubs. I joined clubs. Emily played tennis. I played piano. Emily got praised. I got compared. It didn't matter what I accomplished. There was always someone better. Usually Emily. When I was 16, I won a statewide design competition for high school students. I remember running into the kitchen holding the certificate. "Mom! Dad! Look!" My father glanced at it. "That's nice." My mother smiled. "Very nice, honey." Then Emily came downstairs wearing a new dress. My mother immediately turned toward her. "Oh my goodness, Emily, that color is beautiful on you." I stood there holding my certificate. It wasn't that they didn't love me, that was the hardest part. They loved me. Just differently. At least, that's what I told myself. For years, I convinced myself that maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe families were just like this. Then I went to college, and everything changed. I discovered that I was good at something. Really good. I studied corporate design and visual communication. I worked internships. I stayed up until 2 in the morning building presentations. I learned how companies communicated through architecture, branding, product environments, executive spaces, and visual systems. I became obsessed with understanding why certain rooms made people feel powerful, while others made them feel insignificant. Why some brands felt trustworthy, why some companies felt innovative, why certain details made people remember an experience. I loved it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to compete with Emily. I was competing with myself. And I was winning. After graduation, I got a junior position at Vantage Meridian, then another promotion, then another. I moved into corporate design. Eventually, I became lead designer for several major projects. The work was intense. The hours were long. But I loved it. My family didn't understand any of it. My father would say, "So you're basically decorating offices?" I would explain. He would laugh. "Whatever you say." My mother would ask when I planned to get a real career. Then came the moment that should have changed everything. 2 years before Emily's engagement, Adrian Blackwell personally approved me to lead a major corporate redesign project. It was one of the largest assignments Vantage Meridian had undertaken. I spent 11 months working on it. 11 months. There were international meetings, prototype rooms, brand strategy sessions, architectural reviews, countless revisions. I traveled, I presented, I negotiated, I argued with executives twice my age, and eventually, the project was approved. It became one of the most successful corporate design launches in the company's history. Adrian sent me a handwritten note afterward, 3 sentences. That's all. But I kept it. "You earned this. You didn't inherit it. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I had never told my family about that note, because every time I talked about work, they somehow found a way to make me feel ridiculous. So I stopped. I stopped telling them about promotions. I stopped telling them about projects. I stopped explaining my salary. I stopped correcting them when they underestimated me. And that turned out to be a mistake, because silence leaves room for people to invent their own version of you, and my family had invented a very convenient one. Clara was struggling. Clara couldn't hold down a job. Clara was between things. Clara had wasted her potential. Clara was still figuring herself out. None of it was true, but nobody had ever challenged the story. Until that night. I entered the dining room. About 30 people were there. Relatives, friends, business associates, Daniel's family, my parents, Emily, and me. The moment Emily saw me, she rushed over. "You came." "Of course." She hugged me. Then she pulled back. "You look nice." I smiled. "Thanks." She lowered her voice. "Please don't make tonight weird." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "You know." "No, I don't." She glanced toward Daniel's parents. They're very traditional. I almost laughed. What exactly are you afraid I'll do? Nothing. Emily, she sighed. I just don't want anyone asking you about your career. There it was. I felt something inside me go very still. Why? Because you don't really have anything to say right now. I stared at my little sister. I work. She shrugged. Not really. I have a job. Clara, you're freelancing. No, I'm not. You've been saying you're doing contract work for months. I never said that. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. Then she smiled. Just please let tonight be about me. I looked at her. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say, I'm the lead corporate designer at Vantage Meridian. I'm overseeing a multi-million-dollar international project. I work directly with Adrian Blackwell. I have a team. I have a career. I have a life. But I didn't. I simply said, tonight is about you. She smiled. Thank you. And walked away. That should have been my warning. Instead, I sat down. Dinner started. Champagne was poured. People laughed. Daniel's father gave a speech about family. Emily cried. My mother dabbed her eyes. My father talked about how proud he was of his little girl. I watched him. He never once looked at me. Then dinner arrived, and eventually someone asked the question I knew was coming. A woman named Patricia, one of Daniel's mother's friends, leaned toward me. So Clara, what do you do? I opened my mouth. My father answered first. Oh, Clara's taking some time off. Patricia looked confused. From what? My father laughed. She hasn't quite figured that out yet. A few people smiled awkwardly. I looked at my plate. My mother jumped in. She'll find something eventually. My father continued. She always had trouble sticking with things. That one hurt. Because it was a lie. And he knew it. I looked at him. He gave me a warning look. Don't embarrass us. That's what his eyes said. So I said nothing. Patricia smiled politely. Well, everyone has their own path. Exactly, my mother said. Then she laughed. Clara has always been our independent one. A few people chuckled. My face felt hot. I took a sip of water. Across the table, Emily was smiling. Not laughing. Just smiling. And somehow that was worse. Because she knew. She knew exactly what they were doing. And she was letting them do it. The conversation moved on. I tried to disappear. I focused on my food. I listened to people discussing the engagement, the venue, the flowers, the honeymoon, the guest list. Then Daniel's father stood. He raised his glass. To family. Everyone raised their glasses. I lifted mine too. To family. The word felt bitter in my mouth. Then the doors opened. A waiter stepped aside. And Adrian Blackwell walked into the room. The conversation stopped almost immediately. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo, just a perfectly tailored black suit. No tie. Calm expression, confident posture. He looked around the room. Then his eyes landed on me. His entire expression changed. He smiled and started walking toward me. My father noticed. He leaned back in his chair. Who is that? I didn't answer. Adrian reached the table. Clara. His voice was warm, familiar. Every person near us turned. I stood. Adrian. He extended his hand. Then, instead of shaking it, he gave me a brief hug. I didn't know you were coming tonight. I didn't know you were either. He laughed. I almost didn't. My father stood. Mr. Blackwell. Adrian turned. Robert Reynolds? My father's face lit up. Yes. They shook hands. Adrian looked at my mother. Linda. Then Emily. Congratulations. Emily practically glowed. Thank you. Daniel introduced himself. The room relaxed. People started talking again. Then Adrian looked back at me. I've been trying to reach you. I was going to call you tomorrow. About the Singapore presentation? Yes. You're still leading it. I nodded. Of course. He looked confused. Why wouldn't you be? Before I could answer, my father laughed. He put a hand on Adrian's shoulder. Oh, Clara isn't working right now. Adrian stared at him, then at me, then back at my father. What? My father smiled. She's been unemployed for a while. Silence. Adrian slowly turned toward me. His eyebrows rose. Unemployed? I swallowed. Yes, I said quietly. My father smiled triumphantly, and that was when Adrian laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly, just with genuine disbelief. Clara Reynolds? My father nodded. Yes. Adrian looked around the table. Then he said, she is the lead corporate designer on the largest international project our company has launched this year. Nobody moved. My mother froze. Emily's smile disappeared. Daniel stared at me, and Adrian continued. She reports directly to my executive office. My father's face went pale. I could hear my heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Adrian looked at me. You didn't tell them? I slowly shook my head. No. He smiled, then looked at my father. Well, I suppose tonight was a good time to fix that misunderstanding. Nobody spoke. My father finally managed. That's not possible. Adrian raised an eyebrow. I would know. My mother looked at me. You told us you were struggling. I never said that. Emily whispered. Clara. I looked at her. What? She looked terrified. For the first time in my life, my sister looked at me like I was someone she couldn't control, and I realized something. This wasn't the moment I had been waiting for. It was only the beginning. Because my family had spent years creating a story about me, and now, for the first time, they were being forced to hear the truth. But I had no intention of giving them the whole truth yet. Not until they understood exactly how badly they had underestimated me. The rest of dinner was painfully quiet. Not literally quiet. People were still talking. Forks still touched plates. Glasses still clinked. Someone laughed at something near the other end of the room. But our table had changed. The air felt different. Everyone was watching everyone else. My father kept looking at Adrian. My mother kept looking at me. Emily wouldn't look at me at all. Daniel seemed genuinely confused. Adrian, apparently unaware of the emotional disaster he had just caused, continued speaking to me about work. He asked about the presentation, the Singapore project, the executive board's concerns, the timeline. I answered, calmly, professionally, and every word I said made my father's face tighter. Finally, Adrian said something that I knew would hurt them even more. You should show them the design mock-ups sometime. My mother blinked. You design buildings? Not exactly. I explained what I did. Brand environments, executive spaces, corporate identity systems, strategic design, large-scale projects. My mother stared. You never told us. I looked at her. You never asked. That sentence landed harder than I expected. She looked away. After dinner, Adrian was pulled into another conversation. I stepped outside. I needed air. The night was cold. I stood near the terrace railing, staring at the dark lawn. A few minutes later, my mother came outside. She closed the door behind her. Clara. I didn't turn around. What? Why didn't you tell us? I laughed softly. Tell you what? That you're doing all this. I've told you. You said you were working. Yes. But you made it sound like... Like what? She hesitated. Like you were struggling. I finally turned. I never made it sound like that. She looked uncomfortable. Your father misunderstood. I almost laughed. My father introduced me as an unemployed failure. He didn't say failure. He didn't have to. She folded her arms. You know how your father is. No. What? I know exactly how he is. She sighed. Clara, this isn't the time. Then when is? She stared at me. You're making this about yourself. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm not making anything about myself. This is Emily's engagement. I know. You embarrassed her. I stared at her. That sentence broke something inside me. They embarrassed me. They didn't mean it. Mom. What? I stood there while Dad told 30 people I was unemployed. He was joking. He wasn't. You know your father. Yes. I looked back through the glass doors. Emily was inside, laughing with Daniel, as if nothing had happened. I said quietly, You all have been telling that story about me for years. My mother didn't respond. I let you. She looked at me. I thought maybe if I didn't correct you, you'd eventually get tired of saying it. Clara. But you didn't. I shook my head. You just got more comfortable. She was silent. Then she said something I will never forget. We were trying to protect Emily. I stared at her. From what? Comparison. I laughed. Comparison? She has always struggled with feeling like she has to compete with you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily? Yes. She gets everything. My mother shook her head. You don't understand. No, I don't. And that was the moment I finally understood. My family didn't think they were hurting me. They thought they were managing me. They had decided that Emily needed to feel successful, and apparently, the easiest way to make Emily feel successful was to make me feel small. That realization was worse than the insults, because it meant the humiliation wasn't accidental. It was strategic. My mother went back inside. I stayed outside for another 10 minutes. Then I returned to the table. My father was waiting. We need to talk. I sat down. Okay. He leaned toward me. What exactly have you been telling people about us? I stared at him. Nothing. Adrian clearly thinks highly of you. He does. So why didn't we know? Because I stopped telling you things. He frowned. That's ridiculous. No. You're acting like we're bad parents. I didn't say that. You're punishing us. I shook my head. I'm not punishing anyone. Then what's this? This is me existing without your permission. He stared at me. For once, he had no response. Then he lowered his voice. Don't make a scene tonight. I smiled. I haven't. Keep it that way. That sentence stayed with me, because it told me everything. He wasn't ashamed of what he had done. He was afraid of what I might do next, and he had every reason to be. Because after I got home that night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table until 3 in the morning. I opened my laptop. I looked at the projects I had worked on. The presentations, the awards, the emails, the design approvals, the documents, the things my family had never bothered to understand. And I thought about my father's voice. She's unemployed. I thought about my mother's smile. She'll find something eventually. I thought about Emily. Please don't make tonight weird. Then I opened an old folder. Inside was Adrian's handwritten note. You earned this. You didn't inherit it. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I realized something. I had spent years trying to prove myself to people who had already decided they wouldn't believe me. That was my mistake. I didn't need to prove anything. But there was another question. What did I do with people who had deliberately tried to diminish me? The answer came slowly. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to expose family secrets. I wasn't going to destroy Emily's engagement. I wasn't going to become cruel. I was going to do something much simpler. I was going to stop protecting them from the consequences of their own behavior. That decision changed everything. The next morning, I went to work. Adrian called me into his office. He closed the door. I didn't realize. Realize what? That your family didn't know. I shrugged. They never asked. He leaned against his desk. Are you okay? I thought about lying. Instead, I said, yes. He studied me. You sure? No. He smiled slightly. Better answer. I told him everything. Not every detail. Just enough. He listened. When I finished, he said, Clara, you know what your problem is? I laughed. I assume you're about to tell me. You're still waiting for people who underestimated you to approve of you. That sentence hit hard. He continued. Stop. I looked at him. You don't need their approval. I know. No, you don't. He walked to the window. You're one of the best designers I've ever worked with. Thank you. You built your career without their help. Yes. So why are you still asking them, silently, to recognize it? I didn't answer. Because he was right. That day, something changed in me. Not dramatically. There was no sudden transformation. I simply stopped explaining myself. When my mother texted me, I answered politely. When my father called, I didn't argue. When Emily sent me a message asking if I was still upset, I said, I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. She replied, I'm sorry. I stared at the message. Then she sent another. You know I didn't mean for Dad to say all that. I typed, You didn't stop him. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I didn't know what to do. I responded, You knew what was happening. She didn't answer. 2 days later, she called. I almost didn't pick up. Hi, Clara. Yes. Can we talk? Sure. She sounded nervous. Dad is furious. I assumed. He thinks you embarrassed him. I didn't. He says Adrian made him look stupid. He did that himself. She sighed. Can you please just let this go? I closed my eyes. There it was. The same request. The same family pattern. Don't react. Don't challenge. Don't make things uncomfortable. Absorb it. Smile. Move on. I said, No. Silence. What? No. Clara. I've spent my entire life letting things go. She didn't speak. I'm not doing it anymore. You're going to ruin everything. I didn't ruin anything. She hung up. That night, I received a message from my father. You need to apologize to your mother. I didn't respond. Then another. You owe your sister support. I didn't respond. Then, don't forget who your family is. I stared at that one for a long time. Then I put my phone face down. Because suddenly, I understood. Family wasn't supposed to mean that one person had to stay small so everyone else could feel big. And I wasn't going to stay small anymore. 3 weeks later, I received an invitation. Not from my family. From Vantage Meridian. There was going to be an annual executive charity gala. Adrian was hosting. Board members would attend. Major investors. International partners. Senior executives. And Daniel's father was one of the invited guests. I almost laughed when I saw his name on the guest list. Then I saw another name. My father. Robert Reynolds. Apparently, Daniel's family had invited him as part of the wedding planning committee. My mother, too. Emily. Daniel. All of them. And Adrian wanted me there. Not as an assistant. Not as staff. As the lead corporate designer responsible for the visual identity and environmental design of the event. I almost declined. Then I remembered something. My father had spent years telling people I wasn't successful. I didn't need to prove him wrong, but I also didn't need to hide from him, so I accepted. The next few weeks were some of the strangest of my life. My family suddenly became interested in my career. My mother asked what I made. My father asked about Adrian. Emily asked whether I could get them into exclusive events. I answered politely. Nothing more. One evening, my father called. Clara. Yes? Your mother says you're involved with Blackwell's company. I am. How much responsibility do you have? A fair amount. What does that mean? It means I'm responsible for major projects. He was quiet. Then, are you actually close with him? I almost laughed. He's my boss. I mean personally. No. Could you introduce me? There it was. I leaned back in my chair. Why? You know I have business interests. You never mentioned them before. I didn't know you had access. I smiled. Dad. What? You didn't think I had a job. He was silent. I have access because I earned it. I understand that. No. What? You don't. He became defensive. I'm trying to support you. By asking me to introduce you to my boss? There's nothing wrong with networking. Nothing. Then do it. I looked out my window. No. What? No. You're being childish. I have boundaries. You're punishing me. No. Then why? Because I don't mix family with work. He hung up. For the first time, I felt no guilt. That was new. I had always felt guilty when my father was angry. Not anymore. The week before the gala, Emily called again. She sounded different. Less confident. Clara? Yeah? Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you really that important at Vantage Meridian? I smiled. Why? Because Daniel's father said Adrian respects you. He does. And Dad thinks you're exaggerating. I don't care what Dad thinks. She was quiet. Then, I do. What do you mean? I care what Dad thinks. I know. And I'm starting to realize he doesn't think very highly of anyone. I didn't respond. She continued. Especially people he can't control. That surprised me. Are you okay? She laughed bitterly. That's ironic coming from you. Emily. Sorry. Silence. Then she said, I owe you an apology. I waited. I should have defended you. Yes. I know. You did hurt me. I know. She sounded like she was crying. I thought if I let Dad talk about you that way, he'd stop comparing us. And did he? No. She took a shaky breath. He just started comparing me to everyone else. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I saw the possibility that Emily wasn't the enemy. She had benefited from the system. But she was also trapped inside it. That didn't erase what she'd done, but it made the situation more complicated. I don't hate you, I said. I know. But I need distance. I understand. We ended the call. I sat quietly for a while. Then I returned to work. The gala became my focus. I worked on everything. The entrance, the lighting, the stage, the visual identity, the presentation materials, the executive lounge. Every detail had to communicate the same message: power without arrogance, success without desperation, confidence without noise. Adrian reviewed the final design personally. He looked around the finished ballroom. This is excellent. Thank you. He smiled. You know what's funny? What? Your father is going to be here. I know. And he's going to see this. I know. Adrian studied me. You nervous? No. Angry? I thought about it. No. What are you? I smiled. Done. He nodded. That may be the healthiest answer I've heard all year. The night of the gala arrived. I wore a black dress. Simple. Elegant. No flashy jewelry. My hair was pinned back. I stood near the entrance as guests arrived. People greeted me. Executives, designers, investors, architects, clients. I moved through the room naturally. This was my world. Not because I was rich, not because I was important, because I had earned my place there. Then my family arrived. My mother saw me first. She stopped. For a second, she didn't recognize me. Then her expression changed. Clara? Hi, Mom. She looked around. You designed all this? Yes. She smiled nervously. It's beautiful. Thank you. My father walked up. He looked at the ballroom, then at me. Very impressive. Thanks. He cleared his throat. You should introduce me to some people. I stared at him. You know plenty of people here. Not like you do. I smiled. I'm working tonight. His jaw tightened. Then Daniel arrived. He shook my hand. Clara. Daniel. This place is incredible. Thank you. Emily came behind him. She hugged me. I'm proud of you. I whispered. Thank you. My father watched us. Then he said, Don't get carried away. I looked at him. What? This is still a job. I smiled. I know. Then Adrian entered. The room shifted. He was immediately surrounded by people. He greeted several investors, spoke to executives. Then he saw me. He walked directly toward me. Clara. Adrian. He smiled. Everything looks perfect. Glad you like it. He looked toward my family, then back at me. Ready? For what? Your presentation. I blinked. My presentation? He smiled. I didn't tell you? No. You're presenting the new international design strategy to the board tonight. My stomach dropped. You're serious? Very. My father overheard. He looked shocked. You're presenting? I turned. Yes. To the board? Yes. Adrian nodded. She's been leading the entire strategy. My father looked at me. Something shifted in his expression. Not pride. Fear. He finally understood. He had not simply underestimated my job. He had underestimated the scale of my life. The presentation went perfectly. I stood on stage beneath the lights. Hundreds of people watched. I explained the strategy, the research, the design philosophy, the future direction. My voice was steady. My hands didn't shake. And when I finished, the room erupted in applause. I looked toward my family. My mother was clapping. Emily was crying. Daniel looked impressed. My father was sitting completely still. I walked off the stage. Adrian met me backstage. Well done. Thanks. You know what your father just said? I smiled. I don't want to know. He asked one of the board members if you were really leading the project. I laughed. Of course he did. Adrian shook his head. You okay? Yes. Good. Then he said, because tomorrow morning I'm announcing your promotion. I froze. What? You've earned it. To what? Director of Corporate Design. I couldn't speak. Adrian smiled. Congratulations. I looked at him, then at the ballroom, then at my father. And for the first time, I understood what revenge really was. It wasn't humiliation. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't making someone hurt. Sometimes revenge was simply becoming so undeniable that the lie could no longer survive. The promotion announcement happened the next morning. Adrian called the senior leadership team together. He announced my new position, Director of Corporate Design. There was applause. People congratulated me. My team hugged me. Someone brought champagne. I smiled. I thanked everyone. And then I received a text from my mother. We're so proud of you. I stared at the message. Those words should have made me happy. Instead, they made me sad. Because I wondered why it had taken this long. Why had I needed a billionaire boss to validate my life? Why had my family needed to see other people respect me before they could respect me themselves? I didn't answer immediately. Then I wrote, "Thank you." That's all. 2 words. I didn't need more. That evening, my father came to my apartment. I wasn't expecting him. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He entered. He looked around, then sat down. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, I owe you an apology. I looked at him. Yes. He nodded. I treated you unfairly. Yes. He looked surprised that I didn't soften it. I was wrong. Yes. He sighed. I don't know why I did it. I sat across from him. I do. He looked at me. You wanted Emily to feel successful? His eyes dropped. She always felt like she couldn't measure up. So you made sure I looked smaller. He swallowed. I thought you could handle it. That sentence hurt more than anything else, because I had heard it before. People always assume the person who appears strongest can absorb the most damage. I said quietly, being strong doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. He nodded. I know. No, Dad. He looked at me. You don't. I took a breath. Do you know what it felt like when I was 16 and I won that design competition? He frowned. You remember? I remember everything. I told him. The certificate, the kitchen, his. That's nice. Emily walking downstairs. My mother's attention immediately shifting to her. He looked uncomfortable. I didn't realize. You didn't notice. He didn't respond. I continued. Do you know what it felt like when I graduated? He shook his head. You said Emily was the one who was going places. I didn't mean. You did. Silence. Do you know what happened after that? He looked at me. I stopped telling you things. His face changed. I stopped telling you about promotions. I continued. I stopped telling you about projects. My voice trembled. I stopped telling you when I was proud of myself. He looked down, and I started pretending I didn't care. My father wiped his face. I am sorry. I believed him. But forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. And it wasn't the same as returning to the old relationship. I said, I forgive you. He looked up. But things can't go back to the way they were. He nodded. I understand. I need you to understand something else. What? You don't get to tell people who I am anymore. He nodded. You don't get to introduce me as your unemployed daughter. No. You don't get to explain my life. No. You don't get to take credit for what you didn't support. His eyes filled with tears. I know. He stood. At the door, he stopped. Clara? Yes? I'm proud of you. I looked at him. For years, I had imagined hearing those words. I had imagined they would feel like fireworks. They didn't. They felt quiet, almost ordinary, and somehow that made them more meaningful. Thank you, I said. He left. A month later, Emily married Daniel. The wedding was beautiful. I attended. I gave a speech. Not a cruel speech. Not a revenge speech. I talked about how families sometimes confuse love with control, how comparison can destroy relationships, how people can spend years trying to make someone else feel small because they are afraid of their own insecurities. I didn't name anyone. I didn't need to. Everyone knew. When I finished, Emily hugged me. I deserved that. I smiled. You deserve the truth. She cried. I love you. I love you too. Things between us never became perfect, but they became real, and that was better. My parents changed slowly. My father stopped asking about Adrian. My mother stopped comparing me and Emily. They started asking about my work. Actually asking. Listening. Learning. It was strange. Sometimes they would ask questions and I would realize they genuinely wanted to understand. That mattered. But the biggest change happened inside me. I stopped needing their approval. That was the real revenge. Not the gala. Not Adrian. Not the promotion. Not the moment my father realized I wasn't unemployed. The real revenge was waking up one morning and realizing that I no longer cared whether my family believed I was successful. Because I knew. I knew what I had built. I knew how many nights I had stayed awake working. I knew how many failures I had survived. I knew how many times I had walked into rooms where nobody expected anything from me and left having earned their respect. I knew. And that was enough. A year later, I was promoted again. I became vice president of global corporate design. The announcement was made at another company event. Adrian stood beside me. My team applauded. My parents were in the audience. My father stood first. He clapped harder than anyone. My mother cried. Emily smiled. I looked at them, and for a second I remembered that dinner. The white tablecloth. The champagne. My father's voice. "Oh, Clara, don't mind her. She's unemployed." I almost smiled, not because I wanted to hurt him, because I remembered the girl sitting at that table. The girl who thought she needed permission to be proud of herself. The girl who believed silence was the price of belonging. The girl who thought maybe there was something wrong with her because the people she loved couldn't see her. I wanted to go back to her. I wanted to put my hand on her shoulder and tell her, "You're not too much. You're not behind. You're not a failure. They're simply looking at you through the wrong lens, and one day you will stop caring what they see." That night, after the event, I walked outside alone. The city lights stretched across the horizon. My phone buzzed. It was my father. "Proud of you, kiddo." I smiled. Then I put the phone away. I didn't need to respond immediately. I didn't need to prove anything. I just stood there, breathing. For the first time, success didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom. And that's when I finally understood something. The most satisfying revenge isn't making the people who hurt you suffer. It's building a life they can no longer define. Because people can call you a failure. They can misunderstand you. They can reduce your accomplishments. They can tell everyone you're nothing. But eventually, reality has a way of becoming louder than the lies. And when that happens, you don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. You don't need to destroy anyone. You simply stand there, calmly, confidently, and let the truth introduce you. For years, I thought my revenge would be the moment my family finally admitted they were wrong. It wasn't. The real victory was realizing I didn't need them to admit anything. My father eventually apologized. My sister eventually understood. My mother eventually changed. But none of that created my success. I did. The late nights did. The failures did. The risks did. The moments when nobody believed in me did. And maybe that's the lesson I carry with me now. When people constantly underestimate you, don't waste your life trying to convince them otherwise. Build, learn, grow, become undeniable. Because eventually, the people who called you a failure will either have to change their story or admit they were never paying attention. And sometimes, the most powerful response isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the person they said you could never become. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you probably know how deeply those words can hurt. But remember Clara's story. You don't have to destroy the people who doubted you. Sometimes you just have to keep building until their opinion no longer has any power over your life. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and tell me. Have you ever had someone underestimate you, only to prove them completely wrong? And if you enjoy emotional family drama, satisfying revenge, and stories where the truth finally wins, make sure to subscribe for the next story.